Okay, so we were doing on to this where we're talking about data types and how basic variables we would assign to it. So we're discussing on the same yesterday. So one of them, so while writing in Apex, if you see, as a majority of time you have to refer to the developer guide. So all we want to know that how your primitive data types would work. So primitive data types is the one which helps you in dealing of the majority of storing of variables values, let's say integer, double, boolean, blob, datetime, decimal, a couple of data types you have. I mean, these all are used for primitive things, which is like, yes, of course, you would be based on this value, you would be calculating something, or you are helping to your program to logic get supported. So all this would be having a primitive logics. So where we don't have any non-primitive stuff. So the non-primitive stuffs would be like say in other Java program model if you see. So they have some logic called as stack, queue, structures. So those are comes under non-primitive, but we don't have in Salesforce. But we just always talk about the primitive thing. Yes, we have a defined value, so that can be accessible. This doesn't have any other external meaning. Um, so just like normal values where we try to assign it and then we retrieve back. So this all we just talk onto the time of primitive things. What is possible is of course these are the types which has been already defined by Apex from a Salesforce. There are user defined also we have. Where let's say for example you create a class, you create an object and you create a class variable, so where you're trying to define a variable there, where you create an object you are trying to define an object there, and their object instance variable, let's say class abc. So abc a, so a is nothing but you have defined a variable there. uh, it is not having anything like integer, float something or double or something, where we have defined. So all we talk is all we talk is whether it is a user defined of primitive or just like that's out of box, it's just giving the primitive types.
Hey guys.
Hey James. Hey, James, we just started now, so you not to worry about it.
Okay.
So where exactly we dropped yesterday? From there we have started.
Okay.
So it's just all we are talking about the primitive data types. So what it is helping out, and we don't have in sales, so it's non-primitive. Um, we're generally other like queue, stack, something that the structures of trees would be there. We don't have such. It's all about the primitive data types which I'm talking about. Okay, so yesterday while giving explanations, I had some things. Um, so this is the one. So we stored an integer value, sorry, string value there, and we tried to convert them to a blob by doing a typecasting blob dot value of that whatever the string is there, it is converted. So now this b is holding some value. Okay, so if you see this would be saying three. So one, two, three, three chars are there in this string. So that's all. How long bigger you take it, so we don't care. So we just count in terms of how many chars such thing is present inside. So that's what generally the blob does. So if you still go into deeper, it will be having zeros and ones because they are called as binary large object. So likewise, we can also typecast from a string to integer, all that we can do, but simply they should have a numbers. And look at this is how we try to assign a variable values. Let's say string str, you're trying to put in a single quotes. So that's how you assign a value to a string variable. And for flat integer, so you just simply assign a number. Where you say integer, int, a is equal to 10. So you don't have any single quotes or nothing else we don't have. And we generally don't use double quotes in Salesforce. So all for the any string formats, we'll be using single quotes. If you see here also, for debugging, we are trying to put a single quotes there. So that's how we try to handle the strings. So Boolean by default, they will be always null. So it's not only Boolean, any variable, any string, any data type variable you try to print without assigning any value, always it is null in Salesforce. Let's say you try to define a list and you queried a record, but the query record returns zero. But if it is written zero, so there's no any record is assigned to the particular list. Still that list is null. So that's how it is. In Salesforce, we don't we you try to query, you do whatever, or you try to just define a simple variable. But if you don't assign anything, it is absolutely null. Okay, so date time. So yesterday what we did is we tried to add some days. and then we try to print it. Let's say for today is, if you see 2nd of March for me, it will be 4th of March, it will be displaying here because 2 days ahead it will try to print it. So if I want to get the today's which month we are into, so it will say 3rd. I mean it is March, right? So it will return an integer number. So guys, we should be very careful that whichever we're trying to call, and that would return some number or a time. So we should be very careful about the values which you're trying to assign to. So what I'm trying to say is your LHS and RHS should be equivalent. Only then you can deal with the program stuff. So your expectation on the right hand side, you would get some number. In the left hand side, you have something string. It won't work out. So what is your return pattern in your right hand side? You should check. For example, here system.today.month. This returns an integer. At the right hand side, it returns an integer. To my left hand side, I should have an integer variable to accept them. If I have something else, so your return results won't map here, and then it will give an exception. For example, this is giving a number return. I know it's a date format. System.today it will return a date, but you're exactly getting their month. So what would be the month? It's just the 3 is a month. So if you don't have this integer here, let's say a string here, now check this what it tries to print. It says illegal assign from integer to string. So it knows the return value is their integer, but you're trying to assign to a string. So that those are the exceptions would come in. So you should be very careful about dealing with them. Suppose you're writing a big program, so you don't know what is the results. Always a developer console is the one with this anonymous window. You can quickly check what is the return type. These are the place where you can quickly execute a snippet and check it out. For example, system.today.month. What is the return type? I don't know. So I'm just printing right away here, right? So just I can just highlight this line and I can execute. So by that way, I'll get to know what return type it is doing. So if it is a predefined already, Salesforce return a method, and then you can quickly check, hey, in between. So what it returns? Somewhere the month we have, and months, yeah, returns month component, that is one. So we should assume that okay, it returns one. So that means it should be integer. So let's say if you click here, so they're showing out an example here. Look at this. So they have added the new instance, some date they've added. Okay, so we can explain this only. So what it talks about. So what it talks about. We are trying to add a new date. So this is something that system.today would already get me the current date of the calendar. But in this case, you are trying to add a new date to the system. Like say 2004, 11, and 21 is the so year, month, and day. Always it is same in Salesforce. Year, month, day, and hour, seconds, hour, minutes, and seconds. Just like that, it goes on. From here hierarchical wise, it comes here. Like say year, month, day, hour, minutes, and seconds. So that's how it goes on. So that's why they're trying to add this value. So to this value, they're trying to pick up the month. So it will be integer value. So let's say 11 has been here. So we have a statement called a system.asset equals where we check, hey, we expect that 11 we wanted to read, but your result is also returning the same. If the both values are same, so then we say that okay, your LHS and RHS are equal. To check that, we're using asset equals. Assets are used for validating the results which are just coming from the expected above things are right or not. In majority of the test classes, we'll be writing the system.assets. Why? Because we're testing your original class is expecting the right behavior. So why we do a unit testing? Uh, whether it is working fine or not, we check, right? The same way, system asset is used to check the results which you're trying to get and the expected output what we desire is are same. Only then it will allow to go for the next line. If suppose this asset statement is blocking and not meeting the condition, whichever the particular method or a block you are into, so that will break and it will go to the next line. It's so powerful. So it can break that particular logic and then can come out of that logic and then go for the next line. So we should be careful while we're doing assert statements. So no, nothing much careful because we know that hey, 11th is the month which you're expecting and the result is also 11. So your LHS and RHS are both the same. We don't need to worry about it. So generally assets are used in test classes where you write a unit test cases. I think if you have a Java background, I think you would have written a JUnit or unit tests you would have written, right? Is it Jamsil or what's the if you have written a Java program in the past, how to do it?
Yeah, we have used assets, JUnits.
Yeah, the same way it is. So just like we are validating the conditions. So now all what I'm trying to do is here just assigning some variables and data types and just playing with them. So yes, of course you can go back to your each and every data types what we have been seen through. It just starts with a class. So if I say here in the promoted data types, so I was just doing on the date. So each and every data type which you see, so they will have their own methods, and then so they have a simple examples also given. You can just go in a free time. You can go each and individual. You can check them. So if you have any doubts, you can come back to me. Say that hey, this I don't understand. Just give an explanation. So look at this. The highest methods we have is in string only. So we have date. If you see this many methods, they have in date. So you have to just at least once you have to glance through this. Why? Because you are picking up there. If I just gave you her date, this date if I give 2nd March 2021. So out of this, some logic you may require only the month which is required, only the year is required, only the day is required. So for that they have given flexibility to pick up each and everything. So you want date, okay, put day, you will get the day. You want month, take this. You want to get the year, yeah, take this. You want to understand today, it returns the current date. So like that, you can check whatever the pattern that you want. Sometimes you are parsing something string. Look at this. Date dot parse. The values are getting in a string. So when you deal with this, when the values are coming in a JSON format, when the values are coming in a JSON format and they're having a string like this thing. But in order to save in Salesforce, what you have to do is date dot parse. Let the string be whatever it is which is coming from JSON. So you are converting back to a date type. Then you can save it to Salesforce. Because Salesforce don't allow a date value to be copied as a string. This won't allow, right? Just do this. Hmm. So if it is not a string, if it is not a string, and directly let's say hmm. So now if I try to execute this, what it says? Illegal assign from string to date it says. But actual string in your JSON, the values are guys, you know JSON, right? Maybe I think for Jamsil, you know about JSON, right?
Yeah,
I was asking about it. Tushra, you know about it? JSON?
I know JSON files.
Okay, perfect. So like say every time when you do a JSON sample examples, you see it could have a multiple things. JSON sample data. Let's say some sample data. Hmm. So like this JSON when you see here, so the name they have, salary they have. What if the date is having some in a single? I mean, instead of putting actual date, they are sending in a string format. Of course, we have to convert this into a right format, and we have to save that in this record into Salesforce. If you think that way, so of course, I need to parse the string patterns. We don't have any other patterns, so we have to rely on to the few functions about the date class. So that's what we have. So date class has a couple of things. Firstly, we have to check before proceeding to any of the your custom logic. Check whether any format you have or any methods is there which is making your life easy. So only then you can work on with it. If you see that okay, none of the methods we have such thing to convert, maybe to a string to date, then we have to write our custom logic to do so. Getting any changes that you see which is not possible If you see only then you have to write custom logic to do it. Or else when it goes for a code review, so your lead or your manager, someone who's doing, so they may reject saying that this method is already exist. Why you all the way you try to get new one? So we should be very careful about any few simple conversions that we're doing it. Please check on the respective data type, see whether we can do it or not. So like one of the example which I was saying is parse. So you have to if you would have parsed a string and then this date parse you would have used, then this would have been solved. So whichever the JSON value you are parsing it, so you would have put the date variable into this, you would have sent, and that would parse into date type, and the value is assigned. So now we are trying to insert a record, so that time we can use the latest variable which has been converted here. So we can get back to that later, but just like see this how it works. So it is converted to a date here properly. Anytime when you do a say no date debug, so this 00 would be there. You don't worry about it because that's a pattern they try to print it, but actually 2009, 12, 27 till that only it is feasible to for us to process on. So other things are just like they are having a time within, but that is not useful. So likewise, if you go randomly to a string class also, you would get it. So string class we have. If you see in string also, a couple of methods also we have here. You want to look at this. This has a huge number of methods compared to this. Okay, now what is this all you're doing if you think? So they're helping out for you to easy to process on something. Hey, if you give a string, I wanted to get there is no last string, three variables. I want to get the first string of the three variables. Something you would like to process is all these options they have. You want to join the two text. You want to find the middle number, what is there in that. You wanted to check a key which has been present in the entire string. So all this you can play with here. So you, I mean, if this have to go through. Generally how string classes would be there. It contains all the primitive methods only here. I mean the data defining explanations also I'm saying. For let's say see returns the value of the char at the index specified. Get me char at fifth index what it is. But generally we will not do this in your actual programming. But you may be it may be useful when you are writing your own custom logic to do you are something like an engine you're trying to prepare it. So that time you may be getting into deeper level some calculations you want to make it. So you would just jump in all to find out, hey, at this index, what is the variable? Get me that. And then with that help, you try to press the next step. Maybe not all times we are using this char index like that. Very familiarly used methods, I'll tell you. So we say that contains, you are trying to give, let's say, hello world is a string you think. And the string which you're passing is hell. So you're saying to check whether in this did you try to figure out this particular variable or a simple word is present in this or not? So what does a string contains check? So it goes check in the substring whether these particular variables are the exact match we have present or not. See, look at this, how the string is finding the same way it will try to find out, okay, yes, it is present. Then it sits and says true because the substring contains exact match. If I something find here and then say R, and then if I just try to find it is not found, right? The same way, even the string pattern such a way that okay, the given string, whatever the values you given, doesn't exist. So basically, the return true or false on the statements whichever you give it. So like that, we say contains string contains any, which indicates whether it is having at the beginning or at the middle or the last. We don't care. So if it contains any of this particular value in that particular input string, please check it. Sometimes we don't want to check the case specific things. For example, here, so this is a small char. So all I'm trying to do it in a caps. See, so this ignored the case, but still it is finding out that there is a HELL. So that is what we're trying to say, that hey, please ignore the case sensitive. We don't care about your caps or small. So this indicates this one contains ignore case. So the substring which you're getting here is could be caps or a small, whatever it is. So we ignore then the case, what type of case you are, but we want to figure out whether the values are present or not. So contains none, contains only, contains any white space. White space indicates there's any spaces between the string. So then we need to check whether that is present. Then how many spaces is present. So whether to it's a valid white space to have or we have to remove them. So all this we can help out to figure out. So if you're passing a string and then if say substring you're saying you want to count the matches, so that also you can get it. So for me, where exactly this would be used if you see, so you wanted to do a JSON parsing and then you figure out, let's say in Git and all we have no code comparisons we do it. So you pasted a JSON, maybe the values that is something that you have. Let's say you modified a program. So previously it had 4 lines, now it is having 8 lines. So you should do a difference check, right? Code 1 and a code 2. It should check a difference check and it should tell me, so what is the change in existing one we have? So it should indicate in a proper color saying that of course this is already the present one and these are all the new lines you have added. So to indicating this, so how to do is something with pattern match to doing it. Existing lines already present on the line, we say these are, you didn't change anything here. It's a green line. Now something that you have added new line. So those comes in some color. If you remove some line that comes in red color, these are the lines you removed. How do we do it? So we all trying to compare with the one file to another file. So while comparing such, we may be useful with these many methods. How many count matched? Okay, 3 records of the same line got matched. No any worries about it. Comparing the two line. So whether it is like yes, true means it say that yes, we don't have any issues. You didn't modify in this particular line. Again, you're trying to add 2 more lines. It says okay, this is the 2 lines which is additionally added. So there is a change. Highlight the 2 line change. I think if you worked in a Git environment or no code comparison environment, you would easily make out. So there are so many text comparators we have. Um, so it's a different checker. So I put here hello world now. See, you see this. So this 3 line has the exact value. So it didn't say anything. So this is a new line which you're adding. So that's the reason it is highlighting saying that, hey boss, this is not matching with the line. Then again, if we keep going on, now here, simply with the line of now. See? So whichever the line is having an impact, it is highlighting here. So this is what it indicates. So in this also they are trying to use some patterns of finding a string between these two files, and they are saying that this particular line is having an issue. So if you say string methods, majority we have here, compare them, contains, string, all this indicates for me actually to compare the entire two files. That time the majority of the methods would be using here. Unlike your original class or original code stuff may be require, may not require also. So we can't justify that. So I'll tell you which are the few important methods we'll be using it. So then, because here too many things we have. So we check whether the string is blank or not. So the input string, whether it is written as blank or not. We check whether it is empty or not. Sometimes we check it's not blank. And then major times we try to compare the two results. We try to find the string length. Sometimes we check with the substring start with, substrings index. Very, very rare cases all these are used. But the majority thing is you are trying to do whether what they contain, whether the content is true or not. Is they blank or not? Do they have value? Check the length, and you want to compare to what is the first string and last string. And do you want to ignore the case and check something? So those are the few frequent things that would be using it. Otherwise, so you can just always check any methods that you have. You can quickly come to the string class and check any already defined methods we have so that we can use them. Otherwise, these are like for a big level, for a product base. Yes, of course, they're trying to build new products, and of course, they wanted to check few items in terms of parsing results to the already existing methods they have. Of course, you can check at this time. Yeah. So likewise, for me, any primitive data types you take, of course, each and every one has a methods. I would request you to go to these individual and then learn about it. So integer is a flat number that we store. So two things I wanted to showcase again. One is ID and one is the object. There's these two things I want to showcase now. So then we are good with the data types. Control E. So ID is a data type. So anywhere if you see a Salesforce record, you will see ID there. This is a valid ID. That's valid ID. I tell you where it is exactly useful. So ID, record, account record ID test. I'm just saying that is account record ID is equal to if I do it this way. So this account record ID, it pulls in the string format because it has alphanumeric where you can find some text and you can find some numbers. So we say it is alphanumeric. IDs are generally in string formats and they should contain minimum of 15 or 18 digit. So why it is 15 if you see? So in the classic UI they were using it as 15 digits. In the Lightning experience they are showing are 18 digits. So what is it? 18, I mean, which are the three changes you see? Sorry, three digits you see. A4, that is what you're having. Without this also it will work. I'll throw this out. And then if I try to do this, okay, then I should use slash. You see this? Though I've taken off these three chars and I simply try to do enter. Automatically it knows that it's 15 digit. Okay, I need to convert back to 18 digits. It's doing. Because of its lightning experience, it's converting that to a 18 digit and it's showing. If it is a classic view, 15 digits one is more than enough to display a record. So only we are saying that okay, it could be either 15 digit or it could be 18 digit. ID are generally 15 or 18. So this is all moved out design. So we don't worry about it. We always now focus on 18 digit only. So generally if you have 18 digit ID, so it is good enough to process anything. So now we know this is an actual ID. So how do I use this? Let's say account SEC is equal to new select. Where ID in or ID equals to colon. So you see this record ID. What is this type when you do it? So equals to something that if you use this way, so we are trying to use bind variable. So this type of logic which you apply is called as bind variable. Bind variable we say. Something that you have a value in this, you are trying to deposit them dynamically and check it out. So this type of thing is called as bind variable. And let's system.debug. So I'm just taking actual account ID and I'm querying them here and seeing the results. Yes, you're getting. So you have somehow you got an ID. With the ID, what you want to do is you want to process the respective records and query them and get them. So for that, we use this ID. Since it is a proper 18-digit ID, so it just went on to query through that particular account record and would have been got the record. See, select name from account where ID. The variable, whatever we pass it down bind variable, it looks like temporary here. So if the value is actually passed, which is correct, so it will be some record here. So then finally it had a debug statement to print this. Let's debug them. So yes, of course, account record name McDonald's, ID is this, and the record type ID is this. See, you didn't try to query ID, it came automatically. You didn't query record type, it came automatically. Is it? Look at this. I just only queried for name. Always you have an ID, even though you don't query here ID, it will come. And if this account has any record types generally, so we have this account types we have, like say restaurant, we have business account we have, and individual accounts we have. So these are the three different types of record types we have. So that's the reason you have record type ID here. So for this ID and record type ID, we didn't query at all, but it came by default because it should know that which type of record you're showing and what things it is. So these two things you need not to mention here at all. So by default, the query would have that results. That's what I'm trying to say. Any question, guys here? So 18 digits I passed, and with that, what is use case if you see? I'm trying to query a record like this. So these ideas would be much more useful when we are trying to compare records or we want to play with it. It's fine, but we generally to assign this is it's fine. It's not only ID, so you may have so ID is more precise to things if you see. ID. You can use either this or you can use this. Both ways it works. Because of course this is if it's a string and this is also actual string, right? But why we don't use string if you say I don't have any a specific reason where to use it. But what if it is it's not having more than or less than 18 digits? So it is a not valid format, right? So I can, if I have like this, we accept only 18 digits or 15 digits, I said. So now you're giving this. What happens? So list has no rows assignment to the subject. So it assumes that this is a valid ID, and I went and checked. No such ID is present in my entire database. It's it. But actually, this valid ID itself is invalid. So that's the reason we try to use the actual one. Getting? Now let's see this. I've just given extra line there, and I'm just saying this. It says was ID, which is like either it is 15 or 18 digit. What is this? It says invalid ID it is. For that reason, we use this. String, it doesn't know that it is an ID or other things you are putting it here, who knows. But ID will know that either it is a 15 or 18 digit one is maximum we have in Salesforce. What is this extra? So they say that it is an invalid ID. So that's the reason if you have an actual statement of 18 digit it is processed, it will go here and then do the stuff. But here only it will fail. It will not even go to the next line. Isn't it? So here it didn't even worry about it. It went on to query a record. That variable, whatever you sent, an ID is not present. That's the reason it queried, say, no such record is present. But if you give such values, dummy values here, at right moment here on it will tell off. So whatever you're trying to give, it's an invalid ID. So that's a use case where we have. So any question, guys?
So to get the account other details, we need to acc.name or ID. We get those details or just.
Uh, I didn't get you.
So the account is returning entire account information, right?
Yeah.
So we want a particular field. Just
So you were saying something. Yes, yes, I got it. So
Oh,
you're
yeah, we got the account information, right? To get the particular column account.name. Okay.
so you should use account.name.
Okay.
So now one more thing I'll do it. So where I didn't query for ID or record type, let's check that whether it is able to print it or not. So I'm gonna give a plus sign here. So why we try to do always a plus if you think here, it is trying to concatenate the string plus the actual result. That's the reason we have that. So again, I'm trying to do a plus and say ID of the record. So again, I have to give a plus y. So you just actual value, concatenate string, and again you starting the concatenation string and then ending it off. So now again, I'm trying to do act.id. Okay. Account.name I'm trying to print, account.id I'm trying to print. Let's see what happens. It printed right. Why? Because I said you already ID and record types are by default they're getting it, so you need not to worry about it. So account name is McDonald's and ID, sorry, account name is McDonald's Telangana is the account name. In the between I didn't have any space, I think so. That's the reason it continued like that. See, I should have something like this. Space and then ID would start with. ID is this. Now look at the crazy which thing. I would just try to give another one where I say this as account number. But as if you see account number, I didn't query for. Correct, right? Account number I didn't query yet in this query. But if I'm trying to print this account number, so what happens?
I think that is pulling entire account record. It's not.
So S object was retrieved via sockle without querying the requested field.
Okay.
So we should be very specific when we are trying to query the field, or you didn't query at all the field and then you're trying to press something on your own. Yes, of course, this we may do these mistakes often. Why? Because we think that we have written a select name from account. Okay, and we assume that account object and everything would get it. But I'm just trying to deal with something with account number. Actually, account number you didn't query at all. So be it wherever you write such logic, it doesn't care. It tries to fail that particular logic there only. Just indicating saying that you have not queried that field. Anyway, that's a simple statement. Okay, we have to go back and query. But be sure that whichever you are trying to use a field and if you're not queried, then it will cause an issue. Why such account ID has been there? By default, they are getting it. ID and record type they're getting it, so we not to worry about it. So that's the reason I tried to print and show this account ID. And here, ID and a record type is by default without acquiring only it's getting. So to print them, what will take? It doesn't take any issues with that. But any other fields, you are trying to query from the account, so they're crazy. You should mention them. So if you mention them, no issues. See, account is McDonald's Telangana, and then ID is this, and then account number is this. Any question, guys?
No, I'm good.
So what about Tushira?
No, I'm good.
I think Chamsil is there. No, Chamsil already left. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, how do you query, how do you display? Those are the important things. So for you guys, I'm just saying that go to the primitive types and just look at what are the different types of things they have it. So we know how to assign a variable, now to check it. So I would recommend you to go for developer console and execute anonymous control plus you do it, you get this. Try writing something and then try to print something and check it out how it works. You don't get any places where to check the results. This is the only place you try to do something and then execute and you see the results. Or else to write something logic and check the results in the UI, you may have to write something like controller. You have to write a UI code of a, let's say, Visual Force or Lightning component. You have to write it to see the results. So to go to that extent, so primarily you can see the simple thing if a snippet is working fine or not. So this is a good area where a simple a class is trying to execute and check the results. Anonymous window itself is like a class. So without a class name like that, it is a thing. So yes, no, we are trying to execute highlighted thing and then we're seeing the results. So for that, that's the reason I'm just using always this anonymous window. Anytime some logic strikes to your mind, you want to implement them. Okay, write down here and then see what is the result. So then you go to the next level, taking to write an Apex class and then add the logic there, all you do it. So priorly you want to do a stepping stone. For me, it is anonymous window. What I've thought in my mind, whether it works or not. The query return results, yes, it's listening actually or not. Who knows? Put them actual query and then check it out. Results, what is getting you, check it out. And you have a small logic to compare and check. So you check it out. If it is always working fine, you think, so then you move this logic to your actual class. Because you don't have an option. Either you have to write a test class to test the your original class is working fine, or you have to write an anonymous window to check in original case is it working or not. So that's how we have to do it. Because we don't know what the results would be. So you have to check them. Only then you can do it. So data types, variables, we are good. And sometimes constants you will get it. What is the constants? So let me copy all of this. No. We have one primitive left over is object. So object is the one which types. What it does is it is like a container where any data type it can be converted to that particular object. Object is not the only one which says, hey, you are an integer, you're a string. Okay, fine. We don't care what your integer and state. Let's take this example. I said you, object is the one which can be assigned any variable there. Look at this. For object obj, I'm assigning the account ID record. It doesn't care. It tries to accept them. Oh, sorry. Because it is thrown at the last, right? You see this? It automatically used that particular variable to map to ID also. See, now obj is having this ID. See, for the people who are like having issues, you should not contain, integer to string. String to integer value cannot assign. Or ID cannot have a numbers flatly. So only they have an issue, but object doesn't have an issue. Object can take any inputs. Object can take any data types as input. Be it could be float, it could be number, integer, date time, boolean, anything it can take it. And so why we try to use this object is if you don't decide or we don't know what your incoming data type it is, then you can use that object. So if you know it is the value is short, it will come as a date only. Okay, I'll use date. If you don't know what is actually which is coming, it's a date or I don't know, it's coming a string. I thought it is a date. So then better to have an object there. Is getting? So when you don't know, when you don't decide or when you are unsure about what is the incoming thing it is, so please use objects to convert them. And it's not converting, you are assigning a value directly to an object and then you can later process on the object what it is. You can check the object, okay, it's coming a string. Okay, let me convert to a string. So that way you have to decide it. So objects are very important. When in terms of when you don't know what you decide, what type of data type which is coming in, so please use object. So I as I now placed the ID here, so like that you can put a boolean here, irrespective whatever the types you have in primitive, you can assign them here. It will work for sure. So they're saying that any data type that supports an Apex, Apex supports primitive data types such as integer, user defined custom classes, whatever it is. All the data types have inherited from the objects. So they all are inherited from the object. So anytime they can convert back to an object. It's easy. So when you want to typecast back to respective formats, yes, of course, that also you have to know. Yes, you came back to let's see, ID. You have been assigned to obj. Now again, I wanted to convert them back to ID. How do I do it? So if you have ID and then say ABC ID is equal to, so this is the format of the ID, and here is the audible.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I'm trying to do it. So I'm trying to convert this. Sorry, this is obj. Sorry. So this is object. I'm doing a typecasting here. So this does typecast like typecast of object to ID, like converting object to ID. You getting? So basically, this particular object variable, whatever it is, I'm just converting that to a respective ID format, and then it is assigned as this. So you from here, unknown reason, you have been went on to this. We don't know which data format it came in, so went on this. And when you decide, oh, this is coming as an integer or string or okay, data ID, fine. We will assign that back to their value so that it will be used here to query the records. So I would say ABC ID. So guys, did you get it? So very beginning we started writing to ID to directed to obj object. From there again I've tried converted me back to the ID. So it is all possible. So once you know how you are assigning to the ID up to the object, basically you have to get them back to a normal ID also. So to and fro we've seen assign and again typecast back to ID. So all that we've seen. So I would like to copy all of them and put it as for data type. So these are the examples that we have gone through for data types and variables constants. Of course, data types. What is that? Data types is string, integer, all this all comes under data types. Variables means we are declaring that whatever the variables we are trying to assign a value or simply null value is there. This all comes under the variables. So, few keywords we have. Let's say static, final. These are the keywords which you say static, final. So static indicates whether the value can be written or not. Final indicates once the variable you assigned, you mean thereafter you cannot change the value. So why we use this is in order to define the constants. Sometimes you define a constant and should not be able to remodify the variables. That's the reason we use it. So what do you say that? So we say access specifier as public static, you can use it, or a static final integer I is equal to 10. Again, for the I is equal to 20, if you try to change, what happens is boss. Final means what? Once you define a value, it's done. That's what is we call as constant. Constant means what? What which doesn't change. It's called constant. So let's take another example. Static final string username. So ABC something. This is username. And now again for the username, if you try to modify to this, it will throw an exception saying that whatever this we define is called constant. Once you use a final keyword, you cannot modify that. That is the meaning of it. Let's see. Look at this. Final variable is already initialized. If you try to do this, this is exception that you'll get it. So whatever you initialize, which is called as constants. If you try to play with them, so it says already initialized was it says. Of course, you don't do anything here. You see this simply you try to print it, it works. Why? Because you assign the value. And that's been a constant. Guys getting? So for a few things which you don't want to change any value, often you wanted to use the same thing. Of course, you have to decide them to be constant. How do you define? Static final is the one which is very important so that they would never change it. So first time they accept the value to no update to this. Thereafter it will not allow. Why? Because only once it can be initialized. A value to it. Thereafter, no. So any question, guys?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So what I'll do is, I have to request you guys, please go through this primitive types. I know there's too many here. If you just go through all of them and then come back tomorrow, it will be helpful to me so that I can easily start with the next topics. Fine. So I would be effectively taking access modifiers, class, and collections majority tomorrow. So we'll be giving much more examples on this. So then one more day to close up these um, other inheritance and control statements and what do's and don'ts and the best practice. More 2 days required to close off these basic things. Fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to just be actively go on to check what we have done and so few things because if you say that you have not been touched with these programming things in few days or few months ago, so then just go to this developer guide and see what are the types they are having it. Like how did I do a practice the same way you also do it. So see the results how it has been coming. So what are the methods they have it. So try to assign some variables and see it. So those would help you out to define how to deal with this all this basic stuff. So then I would write tomorrow an Apex class. With the help of the class, you'll get to know, okay, this is how we apply it. And this is how we tested it. That will get to know for sure tomorrow. So meanwhile, you just be with the prerequisite. Like how, what is this variables that they're talking about? What is the data types we have so far? So basically you see all of them, right?
Okay.
Okay. Okay then, see you all tomorrow. So I think by 7:45 we'll start. 7:30. I don't know whether it is possible. Whether it is unlikely. 7:45 we'll try to target to join. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
Mukti. Yeah, thank you all. Yeah, bye guys.